My bookshelf holds some very old hardbound books, which date back to my mother's college days. They are signed with her name and the year in which she attended college. These are some of my most prized possessions. And as a child, I used to love pulling out these books and sitting on the carpet in front of the bookshelf and just losing myself in the juicy, dense text. In these musty pages and lovingly tracing the typewritten font with my eyes and just reveling in the fragrance of the old musty paper. One of my favorite books to feast on in this collection was a copy of Mill on the Floss by George Eliot, who was actually a female writer, Mary Ann Evans. I read somewhere that she was known as the queen of long-winded sentences. Well, I certainly couldn't get enough of her paragraph-long sentences. I wish Mill on the Floss just went on eternally. And I still am always disappointed when I reach the end of the book. I want to share at least one of the things that I love about Mill on the Floss. So I'm going to read out an excerpt from one of my favorite chapters called In the Red Deeps. As a child, whenever I'd pick up this book to read, I'd tell myself I'm going into the red deeps because this edition is a deep red leather-bound book. And back then, even though I wasn't the gardening enthusiast that I am now, I still adored descriptions of nature, and this chapter is full of them. So without further ado, let's accompany our heroine, Maggie, in the red deeps. It was far on in June now, and Maggie was inclined to lengthen the daily walk, which was her one indulgence. But this day and the following, she was so busy with work which must be finished that she never went beyond the gate, and satisfied her need of the open air by sitting out of doors. One of her frequent walks, when she was not obliged to go to St. Ogg's, was to a spot that lay beyond what was called the hill, an insignificant rise of ground crowned by trees, lying along the side of the road which ran by the gates of Dorlcote Mill. Insignificant, I call it, because in height it was hardly more than a bank. But there may come moments when nature makes a mere bank a means toward a fateful result. And that is why I ask you to imagine this high bank crowned with trees making an uneven wall for some quarter of a mile along the left side of Dorlcote Mill, and the pleasant fields behind it bounded by the murmuring ripple. Just where this line of banks sloped down again to the level, a by-road turned off and led to the other side of the rise, where it was broken into very capricious hollows and mounds by the working of an exhausted stone quarry, so long exhausted that both mounds and hollows were now clothed with brambles and trees, and here and there by a stretch of grass which a few sheep kept close nibbled. In her childish days, Maggie held this place, called the Red Deeps, in very great awe, and needed all her confidence in Tom's bravery to reconcile her to an excursion thither. Visions of robbers and fierce animals haunting every hollow. But now it had the charm for her which any broken ground, any mimic rock and ravine have for the eyes that rest habitually on the level, especially in summer, when she could sit on a grassy hollow under the shadow of a branching ash, stooping aslant from the steep above her, and listen to the hum of insects, like tiniest bells on the garment of silence, or see the sunlight piercing the distant boughs as if to chase and drive home the truant heavenly blue of the wild hyacinths. In this June time, too, the dog roses were in their glory, and that was an additional reason why Maggie should direct her walk to the Red Deeps rather than to any other spot. On the first day, she was free to wander at her will, a pleasure she loved so well that sometimes, in her ardors of renunciation, she thought she ought to deny herself the frequent indulgence in it. You may see her now as she walks down the favorite turning and enters the deeps by a narrow path through a group of Scotch firs, her tall figure and old lavender gown visible through her hereditary black silk shawl of some wide mesh net-like material, and now she is sure of being unseen, she takes off her bonnet and ties it over her arm. End of excerpt. Thanks for staying with me and Maggie. Goodbye.